Hey everyone, today I wanted to do another video talking about this Glock 43 here, but specifically talking about the trigger that I have installed in this, which is an OC custom trigger. Now, like I mentioned in the video that I did about these Tango Down magazine extensions, I just took a 2-day pistol class, American Defensive Pistol, through Spartan Training Concepts up in Hillsboro, Oregon. Honestly, I cannot recommend that class enough, or any of their classes for that matter. I'll hopefully put a link to the video I just did about that class. But honestly, excellent training. Easily the best pistol class I've ever taken, so I cannot recommend it highly enough. But obviously by taking that class, I was able to put some of my gear that I haven't really quote-unquote torture tested to a little bit more of a test, and put a bunch more rounds through this gun. Now, my primary gun that I used during that class was my Glock 19, since this is my go-to everyday primary carry. But I did get quite a few hundred rounds through this Glock 43 as well. Now, as far as the trigger itself goes, OC Custom Triggers is a company that I have been using their products for a few years now. The first one I ever used was in my Glock 21 here, one of their OC Custom Triggers, and it was my first time ever experiencing an aftermarket trigger, and I was hugely impressed. I really liked the quality of it, the feel of it, and most importantly, the affordability of it. As many of you know who have looked into aftermarket triggers, a lot of them are not cheap. They are not reasonably priced, in my opinion. They may be good, but again, I think they're overly expensive. OC Custom Triggers, on the other hand, is extremely affordable, and I think is just as good quality, if not better quality, than some of those higher priced triggers out there. Now, at this point in time, every single one of my Glocks is wearing an OC Custom Triggers, and that goes for my carry guns. Like I just showed you on my Glock 19 here. Obviously the trigger guard is covered, but I will show you real quick. Has an OC Custom Trigger on there as well. One easy way to tell is the different colored trigger safety in there. Now, full disclosure, while I paid for both the triggers in my Glock 21 and my Glock 19, I did not pay for the trigger in my Glock 43 here or in my Glock 26. Those were provided to me for free from OC Custom Triggers, so I appreciate them doing that. But that said, obviously I wouldn't be using these, especially in my carry guns, if I didn't actually believe in the product or trust them with my life. But obviously, full disclosure, I wanted to get that out there that I did not pay for this one specifically. So what makes these triggers so nice, in my opinion? First of all, and this is going to go for any Glock trigger, the ease of install. Glocks are so easy to work on. If you haven't had experience working on a Glock, it is so ridiculously easy. However, I will be hopefully doing an install video on pretty much all of my Glocks with the OC Custom Triggers, just because I've had some people say, they don't feel comfortable swapping it out themselves. So I plan on doing pretty much any configuration that your trigger might come in. I'll be doing an install video for those, so be looking out for that. I'll link it somewhere, either below or in the video. Once that video comes out, hopefully that'll be in the near future. But they're super easy to install by yourself, even if you have no formal training in gunsmithing or anything like that. Now, that said, I do believe that they recommend that you have a trained, qualified gunsmith do your install, but between you and me, and of course that is my official recommendation as well, but it is very easy to do yourself if you so choose. Another great thing about these triggers is the feel. Now, factory Glock triggers aren't terrible, but they're not the best. Any polymer handgun isn't going to have as nice of a trigger as, say, like a 1911, but the feel on these ones is still really good, because one of the nicest features of them, well, actually I'll depress this trigger so you can see it better, but up in there is a little set screw for adjusting the pre-travel on your trigger. So what that does is it greatly reduces the amount of pre-travel you have before you hit that wall. Now, basically on this one, because of where I have it set to, it almost feels like a single stage trigger where there's really not much movement until it actually breaks. And to me, that's just about ideal. I wouldn't want it any different from that. Along with that, everything on the inside is totally polished up, which makes, even though it is a polymer gun, does make it feel a lot better than, say, a factory Glock trigger. So again, I think the feel of this is excellent, and compared to other aftermarket triggers I've felt, I've felt some that feel super spongy, and they cost twice as much as this. So I think that for the price of this, which, just FYI, for just the basic trigger and trigger bar is $40. If you want the contour trigger safety or a colored trigger safety, you start adding cost to that. If you want springs and connectors, it starts adding cost on top of that as well. But just the basic polished trigger with the pre-travel adjustment is only $40. And that to me is excellent. And they make them for all models of Glocks, Gen 2, 3, I'm sure they probably make them that fit in Gen 1s as well. Gen 4 obviously. So excellent feel. Now, what about the weight? Now, obviously, there's a lot of different things you can do to adjust the weight on Glock triggers. Again, like I mentioned, springs, connectors, and all that. This one just has a connector and this trigger, so I haven't changed out any of the springs. One thing a lot of people talk about is they don't want to be altering their carry guns too much because they don't want it to be too light or anything like that. However, I will say, while Glock advertises that their trigger pulls are 5.5 pounds, I have never once seen a Glock out of the box that pulls at that weight. So just to show you, I have my little Wheeler trigger pull scale, and I will try to get this on here as best I can. It's a little hard because you have to depress the trigger safety, obviously. But once I get that set up, I will try to get this on camera to see what it's going to pull at. And it should be right about there. So every time I do this, it pulls right around 5 pounds, maybe just over 5 pounds. So really, I haven't reduced the trigger weight that much compared to what the quote-unquote factory setting is, even though in my experience they are usually upwards of like 7 pounds from the factory. So it's not ridiculously light. Now, you could make it lighter, again, if you replace some of the springs in there. But for me, this weight is just fine. For those of you who have experience with these little pocket guns, the lighter the gun is and the heavier the trigger pull is, the harder it is to be accurate, especially if you're shooting like single-handed or in awkward positions. So even just bringing that trigger pull down to 5 pounds makes a huge difference in the ease of use and the ability to get good, consistent hits on target, in my opinion. Now, aftermarket triggers are great. They can feel as good as you want them to, but none of that really means anything if they're not reliable. Now, I can say between this one and all the other OC Custom triggers I own, I have never once had a single issue with reliability on any of them. The class was 1,000 rounds, most of which through my Glock 19, which obviously, again, has one of those triggers in it. Not a single issue whatsoever. Obviously, especially not related to the trigger. Same goes for my Glock 43, same goes for my Glock 21, same goes for my Glock 26, and between the four of them, I easily have, 2,000 rounds, maybe more, through all four of those triggers. So with that many rounds, having zero issues related to the trigger, I have all the confidence in the world that these things will do their job when my life is on the line, hence why I have them in my carry guns. Now, I touched on this a little bit earlier. There are some people who are kind of hesitant to adjust triggers in their carry guns. To me, with the considerations I put into it, I don't care. It's not a big deal to me. If you guys want to know more on the specifics of that, I can make a dedicated video just to that, but I don't want to make this video any longer than it already is, going too deep into that. But let me know if you guys are interested, and I'll give you my little philosophy on triggers on carry guns. But really, in a nutshell, I cannot recommend these triggers highly enough. They are super affordable. They are very high quality. They're made here in the U.S., specifically down in California. And their customer service is excellent. Their selection is fantastic. You can get these trigger safeties in pretty much whatever color you want. And one of the nice things about the safeties is, if you notice, it goes totally flush with the trigger. So for those of you who've taken classes with Glocks and you get the little indentation of that trigger safety in your finger, it starts getting really old. Now this is, an added cost to get that contoured appropriately to be flush like that, but to me, it makes a big difference when you're shooting all day long. So it's definitely something that I like to jump for. But again, you have so many different options. You can get the springs and connectors and all that direct from OC Custom Triggers. You can get Glock tools direct from them as well. So it's really a one-stop shop, and again, super affordable. I think when I did my Glock 21, since it was my first time doing any aftermarket trigger whatsoever, I decided to go all out, and to get springs and connectors and Glock tools and everything and the trigger, it was still right around $100, which is still half the price of some of those, you know, Zev triggers and other triggers out there. Now again, I'm sure they're great triggers, but again, if I can get something just as good for half the price, why pay more? But you know, again, that's pretty much it. Again, I highly recommend them. Please check them out. I'll put a link to their website below. I cannot recommend them highly enough. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to put those in the comment section below. I'll try to get back to you as quick as I can. I'm usually pretty good at keeping on top of my comments. But as always, I hope you're able to get something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.